over 30 years. The 50-year flood has a 45% probability. The 25-year flood has a 71% probability. And the 10-year flood has a 96% probability. That's over any 30-year period. And then what do floods do to the structures? Well, the Corps of Engineers, and this is just one chart, but the Corps of Engineers has done a lot of analysis looking at actual flood events and what they do to different kinds of buildings. So this is one example, a category of buildings, a one-story residence with a basement. And they looked at the height of flood waters compared to the first residential floor. So in other words, when you're talking about the water being -5, it means that it's 5 feet below that first residential floor. So you've got some water in the basement. So the flood waters being at 0 means that it's filled the basement, it's up to that first floor. Now what they're saying is that on average, for this type of a structure, a flood that fills the basement and hits the first floor results in about 25% damage to the value of that structure. Once the flood waters get up to about 3 feet above that lowest floor over the basement, we're talking about approximately 50% damage to the value of the structure. And this is an average, so a better built structure is not going to suffer as badly as an only fairly built structure. And the Corps has curves for other types of buildings as well, so I just present this as an example. So what I'm going to do now is launch into the flood insurance side of things and what's changed and why it's changed and what the ramifications are going to be. So I looked at different data at different times, both for New York State and for the nation. So in New York State, and this was kind of interesting because if you look at this date, November 2010, this is before Irene and Lee hit. This is where we were at the time, about 163,000 flood insurance policies in the state, about $147 million of policy payments annually, $38.6 billion in property covered by that flood insurance, 84,825 claims historically in the program, and $631 million paid out in claims. So then I looked at data for last summer. So this was after Irene and Lee, but before Sandy. And the number of policies went up. More people saw the need to get flood insurance, or more people were told by their banks that they had to. The premiums went up a bit. The amount of coverage went up a bit. The number of claims had gone up. There were some floods that year. And the amount, I misstated this. This is after Lee and Irene. So if you look at the difference between here and here, Lee and Irene can account for that. Sorry, I made a mistake on that. So figure about $600 million in claims for that Irene and Lee period in New York. Then we had Sandy hitting the coastal areas, and the number of policies went up again. The amount of premiums went up. The coverage went up, but not drastically. But look what happened to the number of claims. We've got close to 60,000 claims out of Sandy, and those claims, and this was data that I pulled together in March, so if I was to pull it together again, those numbers would probably go up again. So think about nearly $2 billion in claims in New York just from Sandy.